I'm a biracial person who grew up in a very rural town, and I'm about to tell you some very strange experiences I had as a kid.
So growing up mixed, with my mom being white, my dad black, here are a few things that my mother has said to me and my siblings and that she still stands by today.
Being raised by a white mother left me very ignorant but also anti-black for many years in my life, and that's not something like I say with pride at all. I say it with a lot of shame.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen.
Right, so in today's episode, you're going to be reacting to videos of biracial or mixed kids who are now all grown up here, and they're going to be talking about the experience living with white mothers.
Right, so they all have one common language I've noticed, and they're all gonna be bringing awareness to this topic as they pour out their frustration on how it was like to grow up as a biracial kid with a white mom.
Right, and guys, this is the thing we normally talk about. They say there's no racism in America, but this is not even completely melanated Americans who are talking about this. This is mixed kids who are raised by their white mothers who got to experience the side of their white families. It's going to be coming from the horse's mouth, yeah?
Right, and it is important to note that while not all white moms behave like these moms, today we are only gonna focus on these specific mothers.
Right, guys, let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section. Also consider subscribing if it's your first time here, but for now, let's watch and then we come back and talk about it.
Being raised by a white mother left me very ignorant but also anti-black for many years in my life, and that's not something like I say with pride at all. I say it with a lot of shame. Now, I know that because of how I was raised, and because my dad didn't do his job as a black man, being married to a white woman, that I guess it wasn't my fault as a kid, but the more work that I'm doing and the more, I don't know, I stepped away from my mother, the more that I am just sad because I see all these ways that I was just being me. I was just being the black biracial daughter that she had, but she made me shrink myself and made me fit into the spaces she wanted me to fit into so that she was comfortable and so that I made everybody else comfortable. And one of those things was not wearing a bonnet outside of the house or anything like that. I remember we would go to the stores and stuff, and if she would see especially a black woman with her bonnet on, she would say such awful things that I'm not going to repeat. And I remember as a kid never understanding what's the problem with that, what is the problem. But the more that her hate and ignorance was said to me, the more that when I would go out and I would see a black woman or a person of color with a bonnet on, I would think why are you coming out of the house like that? That's not appropriate. The more that I wear and protect my hair in and outside of the home, the more my curls stay good and stay healthy, not good, stay healthy. And that there's no shame, and there's nobody coming up to me saying anything, there's nobody looking at me funny. It was just my mom's own internal hatred for women of color, and the fact that she felt so confident and proud to say those things around her biracial daughters that influenced my brain to think that it was an issue when it wasn't an issue. And I always knew it was an issue, but when your mother that raises you continues to be so toxic, I guess your brain starts to change. But it makes me so sad because I spent so many years not protecting my hair outside of the home because of what my mother said.
So growing up mixed, with my mom being white, my dad black, here are a few things that my mother has said to me and my siblings and that she still stands by today. If we were at Christmas with her family, Whenever we were leaving, she would say, all the color kids get in the car, or all the black kids get in the car. Every time we went to the beach, she would tell us before we got out of the car that she is staying here until she's our color. And we would stay there for about like 10 hours. My mom had a friend, a white friend, with white kids. When we went over there, she was like, oh, my house is so a mess. I need to clean. My mom said, don't clean. That's what I have slaves for. And me and my siblings cleaned in front of those white kids while they watched TV the whole time. My black friends that would come over, and my siblings' black friends would come over, if she made dinner or cooked at the time because she felt the need to impress them, she would say they can eat here, and that she cooks just like their parents, so they should like it. Growing up all the time, she planned all of her kids and she wanted them to be that way. And she planned and she wanted mixed babies since she was really young, she said. And whenever she's angry with someone or a child maybe, instead of saying the N-word like ER, she says it with the A, but in the most racist way you could ever imagine. Let me know if you guys want a part 2.
I'm a biracial person who grew up in a very rural town, and I'm about to tell you some very strange experiences I had as a kid. 1, when I was around 11 years old, I kept having dreams about a KKK member, and I was waking up scared. And I went to my grandmother, who was white, and I told her about my experiences having these nightmares. And she looks at me dead in the eyes and she goes, well, my father was a member of the KKK, so it's really just him protecting you, Haley. When I was around 8 years old, my family used to try to make me straighten my hair. There was always some condescending comment about my hair, but that's not the worst part. I think the worst part is when my little brother and I were trying to stay the night at my cousin's house. One of the elders said, no, they can't sleep over here because black people have greasy hair and they're gonna mess up the pillow sheets. So I went to my elder and I explained to them that black people don't have greasy hair, that we actually have to put grease in our hair because our hair is naturally dry. And I did this at the age of 8. I was so optimistic because I was hoping that I can make a change in my household. Like, oh, no, that's not how it works actually. But at the end of the day, regardless if I was their blood, a lot of them didn't see me for more than just being a black person. At my public high school, there was a protest against Abraham Lincoln, saying he's the worst president ever, where all these kids dressed up, took the eyes out of Abraham Lincoln, made a poster, and said he's the worst president ever because he freed the blacks. This was in around 2015. When I was 15 years old, I lived with my grandparents. The whole Ferguson situation was going on. The beginning of Black Lives Matter movement began. My white grandpa by marriage was obsessed with Fox News, which is like such a red flag looking back. And he would like make me watch it with him. Every single time that I had an opposing view of him, he would call me a liberal. He even changed my name to Haley Jinping, where he would call me, you know, a Chinese name because I obviously was a C word that ends with an ist. And that really traumatized me because like every single time I would just mind my business and I would come home, it literally was like I was only called Ping. I was literally bombarded with things of like, look at these thugs, you liberal. And that's exactly the rhetoric that I was told daily, to the point where that kind of spiraled me into a depression. So much so that I started to rebel and protest and obviously speak up for black lives and the lives of my brothers and sisters and my cousins who look like me, who I saw myself in. Because my first years of my life, I grew up with a very black community, and then later on, I grew up around my white community more. And that is how I left or got pretty much kicked out of my grandparents' house. And even in college, when I moved back near, my grandpa changed all the locks so I couldn't get in the house because he wanted to make me feel unwelcome, that I could never come back there. Even though it is my inherited home of my actual lineage, and he's not my real grandpa. Throughout my teen years, I was assumed to be the one that always caused trouble amongst my cousins, and that was a bad influence, even if they were older than me, which is like, I was always the one that was stereotyped that was gonna get pregnant very young and, you know, never amount to nothing. And I remember having a conversation and I talked about my school and I said like, oh yeah, I got straight A's. And the sheer surprise a lot of my family members had when they heard that was very... Later on, I became the one that graduated from top university who can speak 5 languages. And my white cousins had babies younger. And they were seen as the people that didn't achieve much. as compared to me. And it's not a competition, but when your whole life you're told that you're not going to amount to nothing and then you're the one that ends up better off, it's kind of like a refreshing feeling, if I'm honest. When I was around 14, I went to a family barbecue and one of my older cousins got drunk. All I heard was the N-word, hard ER. And basically they were yelling at my cousin that if she ever brings home a black guy, they were gonna kill him and blah, 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 blah. I'm just there like, you guys know I'm black, right? And they're like, no, not you, you're special, you're different. I was a little radicalist, I can't lie. I stood up to them regardless of how much it made them uncomfortable. And I took myself out of situations like that. And I never went back over their house after that. That was done. After that, I never ever went back to the house.
This take might be a bit too picante for the populace, but I think one of the reasons that biracials with white moms end up adopting this too white for the black kids, too black for the white mythology is because that's the messaging they receive from their mothers. What are my credentials? Imagine. But I was reflecting on this recently because growing up, a lot of the time, I felt distinctly other, and I was one of those mixed kids that felt like I didn't want to be associated with black culture and desperately tried to white knuckle, hair straighten, punk rock my way, book read my way into whiteness. When I actually reflect on my upbringing and on my adolescence, the black girls weren't rude to me or dismissive of me or frankly ambivalent towards me because I was mixed. It was because I was insufferable. And I learned how to be that insufferable somewhere, and I think it was from my mother. I learned it by understanding my hair and my very being as inconvenient. I learned to recognize my own blackness as a source of frustration. And when I did hear positive things about my blackness, it was things like, well, white people tan their skin to look like you. People perm their hair to have hair like yours. And it was always done in this super fetishizing way that didn't ever leave me feeling proud of my blackness. And when I looked around my family and the dynamics of my family and how they engaged with race, how they thought about blackness, I wasn't exactly picking up from them that it was something that I should be proud of as a component of my identity. I was actually encouraged to see myself neutrally, and neutral is white. Also internalized the idea that black people were monolithic and behaved and engaged in a very specific way that was overtly and subtly conveyed to me as being not very good. Embarrassing, noisy, loud, uneducated. And so when the time came for me to socialize, I already had all of these embedded beliefs about where I sat racially from a point of identity, what I was rejecting and what I was pandering to. I could have been welcomed with open arms and truly believe there were times, especially in my early childhood and middle school days, where I was, but I was unable to receive it because my identity had already been fractured. My relationship to blackness had already been damaged, if you will. And I had already been conditioned to see this part of me, and therefore this part in others, as lesser, as undesirable, and frankly, as problematic.
Welcome, my name is Sierra, and I have a MAGA mother. And today I have decided to share with you a post that she made today. And by a post that she made, I mean a post that she reposted, because that's all that's ever done. Sharing regurgitated bullshit. Today's post was really short, and it said, "Your hero is George Floyd. Our hero is Charlie Kirk. We're not the same. Not even a little bit." This was my response. We never proclaimed him as a hero. He was a regular guy who had a record, and he struggled with drug addiction. He made positive and uplifting videos about his struggles, warning others not to go down his same path because he didn't want them to experience the same things that he had. He died from cardiopulmonary arrest, which is when the heart stops beating due to the lungs not being able to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. It was a slow and agonizing death that lasted roughly 9 minutes, while he pleaded for his life to his very last breath. It was a death that could have been prevented had Derek Chauvin stopped kneeling on his neck. Charlie was far from a hero as well. He was a racist who said terrible things, had horrible ideals, and constantly spread misinformation. In his videos, he debated quickly, cutting people off so that he would always seem like the smartest person in the room. And a lot of statistics he gave were false. He died from a gunshot wound to the neck that blew his carotid artery, killing him instantaneously. He did not suffer. His death was quick. They're not the same. Not even close.
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about the episode we just played. Do you know, this episode reminds me of another one we did last year of a similar situation where biracial kids were coming out to talk about how it felt like being raised by their white mothers. And the funny thing is that despite their stories, this is not like anybody who has been coerced or anybody who's been brainwashed is coming out on the internet to talk about experiences they went through. These are people who lived it, people who witnessed it. And the funny part is that even in that episode, there were a few people who are coming out, white of course, who are coming out and talking about how ungrateful those biracial kids were because they were painting their mothers in bad light. You know, this is somebody who's not lived your experience, yeah, who is coming to call your story or your experience out and accusing you of being ungrateful, yet they are completely disregarding the concerning things you talk about on the internet to raise awareness, you know.
Right, and this is why they usually say, if you're an interracial couple, please, if you're not ready to have a biracial child, leave that relationship alone and get with someone whom you will consider easy raising their children, you know, because why would you give birth to a biracial child? You know full well this child is not completely white, she's not completely black, yet you try and castigate her black side to a point where you make this kid grow up with such identity issues to a point where she hates her own self and hates half the people she represents.
Right, and you know, there's one of the speakers here who really brought a great concern that we need to talk about here. She was talking about how her white mom, when they would go to their family functions, literally she was treating them like, you know,
Slaves.
I didn't want to say it, but you've said it, right? She was treating them like they were the literal slaves, you know. She was like, oh, you need somebody to cook. They can do it, you know, because of this and that. And she was explicitly saying she wanted black kids because of this and that, you know. And I feel like that is a very narcissistic mother who lacks a sensitivity chip, you know.
Not only that, but this is someone who had very low self-esteem because if she felt like the only way for her to be above people, because this is a white supremacist way of thinking. The only way for her to be above someone else was not to get a white baby to compete with. Instead, go sort out a black man and have a black man's child for you to compete with that child.
Right. I feel like that, actually I don't need to add anything because that's exactly what I feel like it was, you know. Because
and she further on went to compete with the mothers of black children who are friends to her biracial child by cooking and compelling them to like it as they like their parents cooking. This woman has issues.
She has issues, and hers is mental, you know. Hers it's mental and it has to be dealt with from that perspective. Because you tell me why you're giving birth to a kid, someone you're supposed to train, someone you're supposed to mentor, someone you're supposed to love with, bring up with love, and then you're raising them up the kind of way that lady was describing her mother. Like, why would you do that to a child? Literally, a child is innocent. They're born without knowing anything, right? But you as a grown adult, how do you just tell children the black kids get in this? Those are your kids. How do you refer without any kind of respect, you know?
Right, because obviously you don't need to say the black kids get in the van because that is a very white marioneted party. And if you call their names or even just say my children in the vehicle right now, your children wherever they are, they're the only children you have. Right. I'm sure they'll know you refer to them as my children get in the car. Is it a must for you to say the black ones get in the car?
They normally say some people should not even
have kids.
Some people should not even mix, because if that woman is like that, you can imagine what her partner was like. Because I do believe for men, before you even have a kid
with a woman, you have already studied that woman and you know the character that woman possesses. Why would you then go and leave your seed with that woman for her to raise, and you know exactly what she is? And if she's a racist, you'll also know that she is one.
Right, it's quite sad. And I feel feel like such men, I don't know, like I wish they could know the impact they leave behind when they walk out and leave their kids with such women to raise their children. These are beautiful, they're all beautiful human beings, and it's quite sad. Do you know one thing I normally say is that it really does not matter how you raise your kid, be it you're a good mother or a bad mother. Right now, it doesn't matter, but it's gonna matter when they grow up, because every child does grow up eventually, you know.
When they do grow up, they never forget their upbringing, especially the trauma that comes along with it. Because, what sometimes parents don't get is, I do feel like that, right? When children are young, you keep doing stuff like, it's easy to do wrong stuff like this to them with the thinking of, oh, they're just kids, they will forget.
And
but
they love me,
they'll still love me forever because I'm their mom, I'm their dad. But kids do grow up, and kids do grow up with memories and trauma.
Definitely, and you're definitely impacting this child and how they're growing up, And the other one who was talking about how her mother used to demonize the black community, and everything that the black community did that her daughter wanted or was doing, she used to knock them down so that the daughter could feel ashamed of practicing it. Like, for example, wearing bonnets. I feel like, why would you even do that? It's why we are saying some women are just racist, and to go on and have a black child to prove what exactly, And in what way are you choosing to raise this kid? Because that lady was speaking like she was left with a ton of self-esteem issues,
Right. And another one I also wanted to talk about was the biracial lady who was wearing a black top, right? And she said that when she was younger, she used to dream or have nightmares of the members of the KKK going after her. And when she finally brought this to her grandmom said that that was probably her grandfather looking up after her. For a kid to have such nightmares, I do believe she was going through some things,
especially awakening, maybe.
Not only that, but physically she was going through some things that maybe her younger self could not be able to ascertain that it was racism. So maybe she was under constant racial slurs and threats and stuff like that, for her to keep having nightmares of the KKK members.
That could be a possibility, I don't know. But guys, let us know, what do you think about this episode, right?
Right, because also another thing she also mentioned was that she had the burden of keep telling her family. Imagine that these are her family members. Ever since she was born, none of them ever took time to go and research about young biracial kids and how to take care of them. So it was her mandate to educate them that black hair is greasy because we have to keep it moisturized. This happens because of this, that, and the other. Instead of her family members taking the initiative to learn it for themselves. So my biggest question is to the black parents, whether you're white, whether you're female, whether you're male, to the black parents, why would you give a white parent a biracial baby and let that baby have the burden of explaining her blackness to her white family?
Something that even herself she doesn't understand fully. It's the little that she goes out there to sort, to try and understand the whole situation. At this point, I'm convinced that the hardest thing you can be in America is be mixed and find yourself in such homesteads. It must, for them, can you imagine how their childhood was? I feel like for every human being, you do grow up we all have our childhood traumas, until you grow up to such a level where you now start learning yourself. Not even that, you start learning yourself and you start appreciating the person you are as a woman, as a man. You start loving bits and parts about yourself, but before you get there, you kind of find yourself being lost in the in-between before you get there. So I can imagine for them, before they get to a level where they start loving this and that about themselves, they start becoming their own individual selves. You can imagine everything in between that they go through before they get to that point. And how many of them actually get to the other side, becoming self-aware, and not just that, but in a positive way,
Right. So guys, let us know what you think about this episode. Also consider subscribing if you're new to our channel, and we'll see you in our next episode.